Catherine Turner was about to freeze to death in the Colorado wilderness, and nobody was coming back for her. The wagon train, her only hope of survival, had vanished into the blizzard. The Oregon-bound caravan she'd joined just 6 weeks ago had left her behind in December 1867, and the temperature was dropping fast. Her thin wool coat did nothing against the wind that howled through the trees like a living thing. Snow already covered the wagon tracks. In another hour, there'd be no trail at all. She'd wandered away to gather firewood. That's all it took. 15 minutes, maybe 20. When she returned, they were gone. "Help!" she screamed into the wind, but the sound died in her throat. The blizzard swallowed everything. Her voice, her hope. Soon it would swallow her too. Catherine stumbled forward, following the disappearing tracks. Her boots sank deep into snowdrifts that reached her knees. She'd left everything behind in St. Louis, her teaching job, her friends, her entire life, to join her cousin Martha's family on this journey west. Now Martha was gone. The whole train was gone. And Catherine was utterly, completely alone. The daylight was already fading. Without shelter, without fire, she wouldn't survive the night. Every frontier woman knew that. The temperature would drop below zero. Her wet clothes would freeze solid. She'd fall asleep in the snow and never wake up. 22 years old, and this was how it would end. Then she heard hoofbeats. At first, Catherine thought her mind was playing tricks. The dying brain conjures what it most desperately wants, doesn't it? But the rhythm grew louder, cutting through the wind's howl. She turned, tears freezing on her cheeks, and through the curtain of snow appeared a lone rider, pushing his horse through the drifts at breakneck speed. His face was hidden behind a scarf, but his eyes, intense, blue, determined, locked onto hers. "Miss Turner," he said, his voice deep and urgent. "Thank God I found you." Catherine's frozen mind took a moment to place him. Adam Xavier, one of the scouts guiding the wagon train. She'd spoken to him maybe 3 times during the entire journey, always briefly, always proper. But he'd come back. "They left," Catherine managed through chattering teeth. "They're all gone." "I know." Adam dismounted in one fluid motion and wrapped his buffalo coat around her shoulders. The residual warmth from his body felt like a miracle. "We need shelter. Now. The storm's getting worse. Can't we catch the train?" Hope flickered in her chest. Adam shook his head. "They've gone too far. We'd die trying." His eyes softened as he looked at her. "I won't leave you, Miss Turner. Not again." Something in those words reached through Catherine's terror. A promise, steadfast and true. Adam lifted her onto his horse and mounted behind her. His arms encircled her as he took the reins, and despite everything, Catherine felt safe for the first time since seeing those wagons disappear. His chest was solid against her back, strong, warm, real. "There's a trapper's cabin about a mile east," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "If we're lucky, it's still standing. Hold on tight." As they rode through the deepening snow, Catherine found herself wondering something strange. Why had he come back? The wagon master wouldn't risk the entire train for one foolish woman who'd wandered off. One man, maybe. One scout who barely knew her. Why would Adam Xavier risk his life for hers? She didn't have time to ask. The cabin appeared through the snow, 4 rough-hewn walls and a partially collapsed roof, but enough to block the wind. Adam helped her inside, then disappeared to secure his horse. Catherine stood in the center of the small space, still wrapped in his coat, surveying what might be her home for days, maybe weeks. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A crude pallet sat in the corner. Everything was covered in dust and cobwebs, but the floor was dry, and the walls would shelter them from the worst of the storm. When Adam returned carrying firewood, his practiced hands quickly built a fire. Flames crackled to life, casting dancing shadows around the cabin. "Thank you," Catherine said softly, "for coming back." Adam looked up, firelight illuminating his face properly for the first time. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe 30 to her 22. Strong jawline covered in stubble, those striking blue eyes, dark hair curling at his collar. "No decent man could leave you out there to die," he said. "But you were the only one who came back." Adam's expression darkened. "Dixon's main concern is getting those families to Oregon before spring. Once I convinced him you were missing, he sent me. But the train couldn't wait. They'll push on to Santa Fe and wait for us there." "How far is that?" "3 days in good weather." He glanced at the window where snow continued to fall heavily. "In this, could be a week or more." The reality sank in. A week alone in this remote cabin with a man she barely knew. Catherine had been raised with strict propriety. Despite their desperate circumstances, she felt anxiety flutter in her chest at the impropriety of it all. As if reading her thoughts, Adam cleared his throat. "I'll sleep by the fire, Miss Turner. You take the pallet." Catherine nodded, grateful. "Please call me Catherine. It seems silly to stand on formality when you've saved my life." A small smile crossed his face. "Catherine, then. And I'm Adam." They ate a meager meal of jerky and hardtack in awkward silence. As Catherine studied him surreptitiously, she found herself curious about this quiet man who'd risked everything for her. He'd been with the wagon train since Independence, Missouri, but had kept mostly to himself. Riding ahead to scout, dropping back to check stragglers. She'd noticed him, of course. Hard not to notice such a commanding presence. But had he noticed her? "How did you become a scout?" she asked. Adam looked up, surprised. "Rode with the Pony Express for a few years. Served as a Union scout during the war. Afterward, guiding wagon trains west seemed a natural fit." "You know this country well, then." "Well enough to know we're lucky to have found this cabin." He glanced toward the window again. "This storm's a bad one." As if emphasizing his point, wind howled fiercely through gaps in the walls. Catherine shivered despite the fire and Adam's coat. "Here." Adam produced a wool blanket from his saddlebag. "Wrap this around you too." "What about you?" "I'm used to the cold." But she noticed him inching closer to the fire. Catherine made her way to the pallet, exhaustion finally overtaking her anxiety. Despite everything, sleep came quickly. Her last conscious thought was of Adam's words. "I won't leave you. Not again." Why had he said, "again"? Morning arrived with eerie silence. The howling wind had died, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. Catherine awoke to find Adam already tending a small fire and heating coffee in a battered tin pot. "You're awake," he said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected." Catherine sat up, running fingers through her tangled hair. She was still in yesterday's wrinkled, travel-worn dress, but she was alive. "Storms passed, but we've got 3 feet of fresh snow out there." Adam poured steaming coffee into a tin cup and offered it to her. "I think we should try to make progress today. Weather might turn again, and our supplies are limited." Catherine wrapped her cold fingers around the warm cup. "How far can we get?" "There's a settlement about 15 miles southwest. Little more than a trading post, but they'll have supplies and proper shelter." Adam poured coffee for himself. "If we can make it there, we rest a day or two, then push on to Santa Fe." The thought of traveling through deep snow was daunting, but Catherine knew they had little choice. "I'm ready whenever you are." Adam regarded her with what looked like admiration. Most city women would be falling apart right now. "I'm not most women," Catherine replied. a touch of defiance in her voice. "And I stopped being a city woman the day I joined that wagon train." A smile touched Adam's lips. "So I see." But as they prepared to leave, Catherine noticed something strange. Adam kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. Not with improper interest. She'd seen enough of that from men to recognize the difference. This was something else. Concern, yes, but also something deeper, something almost like guilt. Why would he feel guilty? They set out on Adam's horse, a sturdy chestnut gelding named Rusty, both riding together because the snow was too deep for Catherine to walk. Adam mounted behind her, his arms reaching around to take the reins, and Catherine felt heat rise to her cheeks at their closeness. It was improper, scandalous even. But their circumstances made such concerns seem trivial. She was alive because of this man's courage. If that meant enduring a few days of impropriety, so be it. The journey was brutal. Rusty struggled through drifts that sometimes reached his chest. Adam frequently dismounted to lead the horse through treacherous patches. By midday, they'd covered maybe 5 miles, and all 3 of them were exhausted. They stopped in a small clearing to rest. As they sat on a fallen log Adam had cleared of snow, sharing water and jerky, Catherine studied his profile as he scanned the horizon. "Why did you become a scout?" she asked. "It seems a lonely profession." Adam was quiet for a long moment. "After the war, I couldn't settle back into normal life. Too many memories, too many ghosts." He turned to look at her. "Out here in open country, those ghosts don't follow so closely." Catherine nodded. "I know something about ghosts. After my parents died, St. Louis became unbearable. Every street held memories I couldn't escape." "Is that why you joined the wagon train?" "Partly to escape," she admitted, "but also to find something new. My cousin Martha has 3 small children. She needs help, and I need to be needed." Adam studied her face thoughtfully. "You're brave, Catherine Turner. Braver than many men I've known." His words warmed her more than any fire could have. Before she could respond, Rusty nickered softly, and Adam's attention snapped to the horse. "We should move on. Still a lot of ground to cover before nightfall." But as they continued through the afternoon, Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that Adam was hiding something. He grew increasingly tense as the day wore on, scanning the landscape with an urgency that went beyond simple vigilance. What wasn't he telling her? As the sun began to set, they'd covered maybe 12 miles, still 3 short of the settlement. The temperature was dropping rapidly. Adam's jaw was tight with concern. "We need shelter soon," he said. "The night will be bitter cold." Just as despair began creeping in, they crested a hill and saw smoke rising from a chimney in the distance. "There," Adam said, relief flooding his voice. "Someone's living in these hills." They followed a half-buried trail through pine trees until they reached a small cabin nestled against the hillside. Its windows glowed with warm light. Adam approached cautiously, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip as he knocked. After a long moment, the door opened. An elderly man with a snow-white beard stood there holding a shotgun. Not quite pointed at them, but ready. "What's your business?" he demanded. "Just travelers seeking shelter from the cold," Adam replied evenly. "The lady and I were separated from our wagon train. We're trying to reach Miller's trading post, but we won't make it before dark." The old man's gaze shifted to Catherine, and his expression softened. "Woman shouldn't be out in this weather." After consideration, he lowered his shotgun. "Come in then. Not much room, but it's better than freezing." "Thank you, sir," Catherine said gratefully. "Name's Jeremiah Hayes," the old man said. "Been trapping these hills for 30 years. The cabin was small but tidy, with a blazing fire and furs covering the walls. A pot of savory-smelling stew bubbled over the flames. While Adam tended to Rusty, Jeremiah gestured for Catherine to sit near the fire. "Been a long while since I had a lady visitor," he said gently. "Forgive the humble accommodations. After nearly freezing to death, your cabin feels like a palace." When Adam returned, they shared a meal that tasted better than any fancy restaurant fare Catherine could remember. Perhaps it was their brush with death, or simply genuine hospitality, but the simple stew seemed like a feast. As they ate, Jeremiah shared news of the region. The increasing traffic on the Santa Fe Trail, rumors of silver strikes in the western mountains, growing tensions between settlers and native tribes. "You folks headed all the way to Oregon?" he asked. "That was the plan," Catherine replied. "My cousin's family is with the wagon train. We're hoping to catch up in Santa Fe." "Santa Fe's a good place to winter," Jeremiah said thoughtfully. "Train probably won't move on until spring anyway. Pass up north gets mighty treacherous this time of year." Adam leaned forward. "What about the trail from here to Santa Fe? How bad is it after this snow?" "Won't be easy," Jeremiah admitted. "But if you follow the valley instead of the high trail, you'll avoid the worst drifts. Take you an extra day, maybe two, but safer by far." As evening wore on, Catherine's eyelids grew heavy. Jeremiah insisted she take his bed, while he and Adam slept on pallets by the fire. Despite her protests, he was adamant. As she settled under warm furs, Catherine found herself watching Adam's profile in the firelight. He and Jeremiah pored over a rough map, planning tomorrow's journey. There was something captivating about Adam's focused expression, the way he listened intently, asked practical questions. In the short time since he'd found her in the snow, Adam Xavier had become more than just her rescuer. He'd become her lifeline. And Catherine realized with a start that she was beginning to care for him in ways that went beyond mere gratitude. But something else nagged at her as she drifted towards sleep. The way Adam had phrased things earlier. "I won't leave you. Not again." As if leaving her had been a choice he'd already made once. What did that mean? Morning came with renewed purpose. After breakfast, Jeremiah provided supplies for their journey and insisted on giving Catherine fur-lined mittens and leggings made from rabbit pelts. "Can't have you freezing before you reach Santa Fe," he said gruffly, waving away her thanks. When they prepared to leave, Jeremiah walked them to where Rusty waited. "Follow the valley like I showed you. Miller's trading post is about 8 miles south. From there, you can pick up the lower trail to Santa Fe. Should reach it in 4 days, weather permitting." Adam clasped the older man's hand. "We're in your debt, Jeremiah." "Just get the lady safely to Santa Fe," Jeremiah replied with a crinkled smile, "and maybe stop by on your way back through." "We will," Catherine promised. As they rode away, Catherine reflected on the unexpected goodness they'd encountered. Jeremiah Hayes, a man who'd chosen solitude over civilization, had opened his home without hesitation. It reminded her that humanity could flourish even in the most isolated places. The trail through the valley was easier going. The snow wasn't as deep here, sheltered by surrounding hills, and Rusty made good progress. Adam kept one arm around Catherine's waist as they rode, a practical necessity that nonetheless sent a flutter through her each time he adjusted his hold. They talked as they traveled, sharing stories. Catherine told him about teaching in St. Louis, the small school where she'd taught children from 5 to 15, all crowded into one room. "I loved the teaching itself," she explained, "but after my parents died, everything felt hollow. When Martha's letter came inviting me to Oregon, it seemed like Providence." "You regret it?" Adam asked, "leaving everything familiar?" Catherine considered seriously. "Even now, lost in the wilderness. No, I don't regret it. At least I'm living now, not just existing." I understand that distinction, Adam said quietly. In turn, he shared more about his past, his childhood on a Pennsylvania farm, his years with the Pony Express, his service during the Civil War, though he spoke of the latter with reluctance, clearly carrying burdens from those years he preferred not to name. After Appomattox, I couldn't go home, he said, voice low. Everything had changed, or maybe I had. Either way, I started moving west and never stopped. Until now, Catherine said softly. Adam's arm tightened around her waist. Until now, he agreed. But Catherine noticed something else. When Adam thought she wasn't paying attention, that look of guilt returned to his eyes. And now she was certain, whatever was troubling him involved her somehow. Had he known she was left behind before anyone else? Had he volunteered to go back, or been ordered? Why did it feel like there was more to this story? By mid-afternoon, they reached Miller's trading post, a collection of sturdy log buildings surrounding a central store and tavern. Their arrival caused quite a stir, and they were quickly ushered into the tavern where a roaring fire and hot food awaited. The proprietor, a barrel-chested man named Elias Miller, listened with interest to their tale. Heard about that train, he said, stroking his thick mustache. Passed through about 10 days ago, headed for Santa Fe. If they got caught in that same blizzard, they might still be holed up there. Hope kindled in Catherine's heart. Do you think we can catch up? Elias glanced at the snow-covered landscape. Trail to Santa Fe's passable, especially if you take the lower route. 4, maybe 5 days' ride in these conditions. He turned to Adam. You planning to leave tomorrow? Adam looked at Catherine with concern. You should rest at least a day. The journey's been hard on you. Though exhausted, Catherine shook her head firmly. I've rested enough. The sooner we reach Santa Fe, the better our chances of finding the wagon train still there. Lady's got grit, Elias observed with approval. Then he raised an eyebrow. You two married? The question caught them both off guard. Heat rose to Catherine's cheeks as Adam quickly explained they were fellow travelers, nothing more. Elias didn't comment further. Well, we've got 2 rooms available upstairs. Hot water for bathing too, if you want it. The mention of a proper bath was irresistible. After days in travel-worn clothing, Catherine couldn't wait. While she enjoyed the luxury of warm water and privacy, Adam arranged for supplies and purchased a second horse, a sturdy bay mare that would let them travel faster. That evening, cleaned and wearing a fresh dress, Catherine joined Adam for dinner in the tavern. She was acutely aware of how they must appear, an unmarried man and woman traveling alone, sharing meals, sleeping under the same roof. In any eastern city, it would be scandalous. Yet here, in the wilderness, conventional propriety held less sway. Still, as they sat sharing a meal, Catherine noticed the curious glances cast their way. Adam noticed too. People are talking, he said softly. Not that I care much for gossip, but you should know your reputation might suffer if we continue traveling together unchaperoned. Catherine appreciated his concern, but found herself surprisingly unconcerned. My reputation will hardly matter if I freeze to death. Besides, what alternative do we have? Adam's expression remained serious. There's a preacher staying here tonight, passing through to a mission near Taos. We could... He hesitated. We could ask him to marry us, just on paper, for propriety's sake. Once we reach Santa Fe and find your cousin, we could have it annulled if you wish. The suggestion took Catherine's breath away. Marriage, even one in name only, wasn't something she'd expected him to propose. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. Adam held her gaze steadily. What I want is to see you safely to Santa Fe with your good name intact. But I won't deny I've come to care for you, Catherine, more than I expected to care for anyone again. The simple honesty touched something deep within her. In the days they'd spent facing death and hardship, a bond had formed that transcended conventional courtship. She knew more about Adam's character than she might have learned in months of proper social interaction. "I've come to care for you too," she admitted. "But marriage, that's sacred, not something to enter lightly, even for practical reasons." Adam nodded, respecting her reservation. "Think about it tonight. Whatever you decide, I'll respect your choice." They parted for the evening, each retiring to separate rooms. Catherine lay awake for hours, mind churning. Marriage to a man she'd known for days, it was madness. Yet when she thought about parting ways in Santa Fe, loss swept through her. Adam had become someone she trusted implicitly, someone whose presence brought comfort and strength. Was that enough? Or was she confusing gratitude with deeper feelings? But there was still that nagging sense that Adam was holding something back, that guilty look in his eyes. What wasn't he telling her? Morning brought clarity. When Catherine descended to the tavern, she found Adam nursing coffee. He rose when he saw her, expression carefully neutral. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." "I did." Catherine took a deep breath. "I've thought about what you said, about marriage." Adam nodded, waiting. "I don't want a marriage of convenience," she said firmly. "If we were to marry, it would be because we truly wish to build a life together, not because of circumstances or others' opinions." Disappointment flickered in Adam's eyes, but he nodded acceptance. "You didn't let me finish," Catherine interrupted with a small smile. "I don't want convenience, but I do want something more than friendship with you, Adam. These past days have shown me a side of you I deeply admire. I'm not ready for marriage yet, but I'm open to the possibility of a future where that might be our choice, freely made, without pressure." Relief washed over Adam's face. A slow smile spread. "That seems eminently reasonable, Miss Turner. I find myself quite amenable to exploring what that future might hold." Their departure from Miller's later that morning had a different quality, a sense of shared purpose beyond mere survival. With 2 horses they made better time following the lower trail that wound alongside a half-frozen river. The weather remained clear, but bitterly cold. They rode as long as daylight allowed, stopping only to rest the horses or eat. At night they camped in sheltered spots, building fires and taking turns keeping watch. On their 3rd night, as they huddled near the campfire in a small grove, Adam shared more of his past. Not the sanitized version, but raw truth about the war, the horrors he'd witnessed, friends he'd lost, the guilt he carried for surviving. "There are nights I still hear the cannons," he admitted, staring into flames. "Still smell the gunpowder and blood. Those are the nights I ride out alone, because I can't bear for anyone to see me like that." Catherine moved closer, placing her hand on his arm. "You don't have to hide those parts of yourself from me, Adam. We all carry wounds, visible and invisible." He looked at her then, blue eyes reflecting firelight. "You're unlike any woman I've ever known, Catherine Turner. I'll take that as a compliment." It was meant as one. Adam hesitated, then slowly raised his hand to brush a strand of hair from her face. "May I kiss you, Catherine?" The question, asked with such careful respect, made her heart flutter. "Yes," she whispered. "I'd like that very much." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, an exploration of new territory. When they pulled apart, Catherine felt as though something fundamental had shifted. A boundary crossed that could never be redrawn. But even as warmth spread through her chest, that nagging question remained. What was Adam hiding? Why did guilt still shadow his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking? The remaining days passed with growing intimacy, not physical, for they maintained propriety, but emotional. They shared stories, dreams, quiet moments that created a foundation stronger than Catherine had imagined possible. On the afternoon of their 5th day from Miller's, they crested a ridge and saw Santa Fe spread out in the valley below. Adobe buildings glowed warmly in the late afternoon sun, promising sanctuary. "We made it," Catherine breathed. Adam reached across the space between horses to take her hand. "Together," he said simply. They rode into Santa Fe as the sun set. The town was busier than Catherine expected, a blend of Mexican, American, and native influences. Adam led them directly to the main plaza, where he inquired about the wagon train. To Catherine's immense relief, they learned the train was still in Santa Fe, camped at the northern edge of town. Deep snow in the mountain passes had forced them to winter here, with plans to resume the journey in early spring. As they approached the wagon encampment, Catherine felt conflicting emotions, joy at reuniting with Martha's family, yet strange reluctance too. Her time with Adam had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. A shout went up as they were recognized. Suddenly they were surrounded by wagon train members, faces alight with astonishment and relief. Martha pushed through the crowd, her 3 children clustered behind. "Catherine!" she cried, rushing forward. "Oh, thank God! We thought you were dead." Catherine returned the embrace, tears springing to her eyes. "I nearly was, if not for Adam." Martha turned to Adam, who dismounted and stood respectfully to one side. "Mr. Xavier, we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. When the wagon master said you'd gone back alone." "It was the only decent thing to do," Adam replied simply. The wagon master, Dixon, approached then, his expression mixed relief and lingering guilt. "Miss Turner," he said, removing his hat, "I can't express how sorry I am. The count was wrong, and by the time we realized you were missing, the storm was closing in. I never should have sent just one man back." "But you did send someone," Catherine said, glancing at Adam. "And he found me. That's what matters." But something in Dixon's expression made Catherine pause. The way he glanced at Adam. The way Adam suddenly wouldn't meet her eyes. "Actually, Miss Turner," Dixon said slowly, "I need to be honest with you. I didn't send Adam back. Not exactly." Catherine's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Dixon cleared his throat uncomfortably. "When we did the count that evening and realized you were missing, I decided it was too dangerous to send anyone back into that storm. The risk was too great. We'd already lost too much time and—" "You weren't going to come back for me at all," Catherine said quietly. Understanding crashed over her like ice water. "I'm sorry," Dixon said. "It was a hard decision, but—" "Adam went back without your permission," Catherine finished, her eyes finding Adam's. "You defied orders." Adam's jaw tightened. "I couldn't leave you out there." "You could have died," Catherine whispered. "I know." "You risked everything." "I know," Adam's voice cracked. Then softer. "I know, Catherine, but I couldn't. I'd already made that mistake once." The world seemed to tilt. "What?" Adam took a deep breath, and suddenly all the guilt she'd seen in his eyes made terrible sense. "During the war, my unit was retreating. We left wounded behind because our commander said we couldn't risk the whole company for a few men. I followed orders. I left them." His voice was raw. "I've heard their screams in my nightmares ever since. I swore I'd never do that again. Never leave someone behind when I had the power to save them." Tears blurred Catherine's vision. "So you came back for me because of guilt? Because of the war?" "I came back because leaving you would have been wrong," Adam said fiercely. "But I stayed because of you, Catherine. These days we've spent together, getting to know you, seeing your courage and strength. That's real. My feelings for you are real." Catherine pressed her hands to her face, overwhelmed. Martha gently touched her shoulder. "Come," she said. "Let's get you settled. You've been through so much." As Martha led her away, Catherine looked back at Adam. He stood alone in the crowd, watching her go with an expression of such longing and regret that it pierced her heart. She spent that night in Martha's crowded wagon, surrounded by familiar sounds of the camp, yet feeling oddly out of place. Her mind kept returning to Adam, the warmth of his smile, the strength of his arms, the tenderness in his eyes when he'd asked to kiss her. And now she understood. He'd risked his life not because he'd been ordered to, but because he'd chosen to. Because he couldn't live with himself if he didn't. Was that guilt? Or was it love? Morning brought a flurry of activity as the camp prepared for another day of waiting out winter. Catherine helped Martha with breakfast, answering the children's questions, all the while watching for Adam's return. He arrived mid-morning, looking refreshed after a night in a proper bed. The sight of him striding confidently through camp made Catherine's heart quicken. Martha noticed her reaction and raised an eyebrow but said nothing as Catherine excused herself. "Good morning," Adam said when she reached him. His smile was tentative, hopeful. "I trust you slept well." "Well enough." Catherine was suddenly shy in daylight, surrounded by curious eyes. "Would you walk with me? I'd like to see more of Santa Fe." Adam offered his arm, which she took gladly. As they walked away from camp toward town, tension eased from her shoulders. "Your cousin seems glad to have you back," Adam observed. "She is. The children, too." Catherine paused. "And you? Are you glad the journey's over?" Adam stopped walking, turned to face her directly. "Catherine, I need to know what you want now. The wagon train won't leave until spring. I'm contracted to guide them to Oregon. But after last night, after what Dixon said—" "You defied orders to save me," Catherine interrupted. "You risked your life." "I'd do it again." "I know you would. That's what frightens me." She took a shaky breath. "Adam, I've been thinking all night about what you said, about the war and guilt, and—" "I understand if you feel differently now," Adam said quickly. "If you think my feelings for you aren't real because of how we met. That's not what I think." Catherine stepped closer. "I think you're the bravest, most honorable man I've ever known. I think what started as duty became something more, for both of us. And I think—" She paused, gathering courage. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Adam Xavier." Hope blazed in his eyes. "You are?" "I am. But I need time to be certain. Not because I doubt you, but because this decision will shape the rest of my life. I want to be sure that what we feel now will endure beyond these extraordinary circumstances." Adam nodded, understanding flooding his expression. "Time is something we have plenty of until spring. Will you allow me to court you properly while we're here, to see if what we've begun can grow into something lasting?" "I'd like that very much." Adam laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Then we'll write our own rules, Catherine Turner. Together." The weeks that followed were unlike any courtship Catherine had imagined. Santa Fe in winter proved vibrant and multicultural. Adam took pleasure in showing her its hidden treasures, the oldest church in the territory, the bustling market, the small cantinas where locals gathered. They spent days exploring, sometimes with Martha's children in tow. In evenings, they joined communal meals at the wagon camp or ventured into town. Through it all, their connection deepened. What had begun as mutual respect forged in crisis grew into genuine affection, then something more profound, a love built on shared values and complementary strengths. Catherine learned that beneath Adam's stoic exterior lay a man of deep feeling and quiet intelligence. He read voraciously when opportunity allowed, spoke passable Spanish and some native dialects. In turn, Adam discovered Catherine's quick wit and adventurous spirit, qualities that had been stifled in her previous life but now flourished in frontier freedom. As Christmas approached, the wagon train community prepared to celebrate. A small pine tree was erected in camp center, decorated with handmade ornaments. Plans were made for a feast. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell gently outside, settlers gathered in a large tent. Lanterns cast warm glow as they shared songs and stories. The children performed a nativity play. Catherine sat beside Adam, his arm around her shoulders. In the weeks since arriving, they'd become an acknowledged couple. Their unusual beginning had given way to what everyone now saw as a natural fitting match. "I have something for you," Adam whispered as the play concluded. He led her to a quiet corner and produced a small, carefully wrapped package. "Merry Christmas, Catherine." She untied the string and unfolded brown paper to reveal a delicate silver pendant shaped like a compass rose hanging from a fine chain. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "I had it made by a silversmith in town," Adam explained. "To remind you that no matter where life takes us, we found our true direction when we found each other." Tears pricked Catherine's eyes. "Help me put it on." His fingers were gentle as they brushed her neck, sending a pleasant shiver down her spine. When she turned back, his expression was tender and hopeful. "I have something for you too." Catherine reached into her pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. "It's not as beautiful, but—" Adam opened the pouch and tipped a polished stone of deep blue shot through with veins of gold onto his palm, a leather cord attached. "Lapis lazuli," Catherine explained. "The merchant said it's a stone of truth and friendship. I thought it matched your eyes." Adam closed his fingers around the stone, expression solemn. "Thank you. I'll treasure it always." Around them, celebration continued. But in that moment, they existed in their own world, a world built on shared experiences and growing love, a world that held infinite promise. As winter gradually released its grip, preparations began for the wagon train's departure. Maps were studied, supplies replenished, wagons repaired. For Catherine and Adam, the approaching departure brought decisions that could no longer be postponed. One evening in early March, as they walked along the Santa Fe River, now flowing freely after spring thaw, Adam raised the subject they'd both been avoiding. "Dixon expects to leave within the fortnight," he said, tone carefully neutral. "Scouts report the northern pass should be clear by then." Catherine nodded, watching water rush over smooth stones. "Martha's been packing for days. The children are excited." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, Adam stopped walking and turned to face her directly. "Catherine," he said, taking both her hands, "these months have been the happiest of my life. Being with you has shown me possibilities I thought were closed forever. But I need to know, what do you want for your future? Do you still intend to continue to Oregon?" It was the question Catherine had been asking herself with increasing urgency. Martha and her husband had made clear they still welcomed her company. The homestead in Oregon's Willamette Valley had always been described as having a place for her. Yet the prospect no longer filled her with purpose and excitement. Santa Fe, with its blend of cultures, had captured her heart, and more significantly, her future had become inextricably linked with Adam's. "What about you?" she countered gently. "You're contracted to guide the train to Oregon. Will you fulfill that obligation?" Adam's expression grew thoughtful. "Dixon would understand if I chose to remain here. There are other scouts for the final leg." He paused, blue eyes searching hers. "But I need to know what you want, Catherine. Where you see your place being." Catherine took a deep breath, finding courage in his steady gaze. "I've been thinking about this for weeks. About Oregon, about Santa Fe, about us." She squeezed his hands. "I realized I don't need to go to Oregon to find what I was looking for. I've already found it." Hope kindled in Adam's eyes. "And what is that?" Belonging, purpose, the chance to build something meaningful. Catherine smiled. I found all that here, Adam. With you. Tension visibly eased from Adam's shoulders. Does that mean you're considering staying? I am. The schoolmaster mentioned they're seeking another teacher. It would be work I love in a place that feels right. Adam nodded slowly. Then, to Catherine's surprise, he released her hands and stepped back. Wait here, he said, unfamiliar nervousness in his voice. There's something I need to show you. Before she could question him, he strode quickly back toward town. Catherine waited by the riverside, puzzled but trusting. When Adam returned less than 15 minutes later, he was carrying a rolled document tied with red ribbon. I wasn't sure when the right moment would come, he said, slightly breathless. But it seems that moment is now. He untied the ribbon and carefully unrolled the document, revealing what appeared to be a land deed. 3 weeks ago, I purchased a parcel of land just outside town, Adam explained, voice gaining confidence. 10 acres with good water access and a small adobe house that needs work but is sound at its core. There's room for a garden, space for horses, and a view of the mountains that takes your breath away at sunset. Catherine stared at him in amazement. You bought land, but I assumed I preferred the freedom of the trail, Adam admitted. Or perhaps I told myself that because I saw no alternative that appealed to me. But these months with you have shown me different kinds of freedom, including the freedom to choose routes over wandering, to build something lasting. He carefully rolled the deed again. I bought the land as an act of faith, Catherine. Faith in possibilities I hadn't dared consider before meeting you. Whether you chose to stay or continue to Oregon, I knew I was ready to stop running from the past and start building a future. Tears blurred Catherine's vision. For a man who'd spent years avoiding attachment, purchasing land represented more than a practical decision. It was a profound shift. Will you show me? She asked softly. This land of yours. Adam's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd ask. Tomorrow, if the weather holds. It's about an hour's ride from town. Tomorrow would be perfect. The next day dawned clear and mild. Adam arrived at the wagon camp shortly after breakfast, leading both horses saddled and ready. Martha waved them off with a knowing smile. The ride took them northwest, following a well-trodden trail through rolling hills dotted with pinyon pines and juniper. As they rode, Adam pointed out landmarks and shared what he knew of the area's history. An hour from town, they crested a gentle hill, and Adam reined his horse to a stop. There, he said, gesturing. That's the property. Catherine caught her breath. The land spread out in a natural bowl, sheltered by hills on 3 sides, but open to the south where distant mountains rose majestically. A small stream cut through the western edge, its banks lined with cottonwood trees showing first green buds. Near the center stood a modest adobe house with a wooden porch. A stone chimney rose from one end. A small barn and corral sat nearby. The buildings showed signs of neglect, peeling paint, missing roof tiles, but the basic structures appeared solid. It's beautiful, Catherine said sincerely. The previous owner was a widower who returned east when his health failed, Adam explained as they rode down toward the house. It's been empty about a year, so there's work to be done. But nothing that can't be fixed. They dismounted, and Adam produced a key to unlock the heavy wooden door. It's not much to look at yet, he cautioned. But I've been making repairs when I can. The interior was simple but spacious. Thick adobe walls, large stone fireplace, windows letting in streams of sunlight, a kitchen area with cast iron stove, a short hallway connecting to 2 smaller rooms. Evidence of Adam's work was visible. New glass in windows, patches in plaster walls, partially repaired roof. You've been busy, Catherine observed. It gives me something constructive to do, Adam replied, and each repair makes it feel more like... He hesitated. Like a home, Catherine finished softly. Could you see it as one? Adam asked quietly. A home, I mean. Catherine took her time answering, moving to the window to look out at land stretching toward distant mountains. Yes, she said finally, turning to face him. I could see it becoming a wonderful home, with work and care and love. Something shifted in Adam's expression, certainty replacing cautious hope. He crossed the room to stand before her. Then, to Catherine's surprise, he lowered himself to one knee. Catherine Turner, he said, voice steady despite obvious emotion. I came back for you in that snowstorm because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving anyone to such a fate. I stayed with you because duty and honor demanded it. But I kneel before you now out of love and choice. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a simple gold ring with a modest but beautiful sapphire. I ask you now, not out of duty or circumstance, but out of love. Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here, or wherever else our journey might lead? Tears sprang to Catherine's eyes, tears of joy rather than sorrow. In that moment, all doubts fell away. This man, this brave, honorable, compassionate man, was the one with whom she wanted to share her future. Yes, she said, voice clear and confident despite tears. Yes, Adam Xavier, I will marry you. Here, in this house that will become our home, in this land that will become our legacy. Adam rose, slipping the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. Then he drew her into his arms, kissing her with tenderness that spoke of promises kept and new ones beginning. As they stood together in sunlit room that would soon be theirs, Catherine thought about the strange winding path that had led to this moment. The decision to leave St. Louis, the harrowing separation from the wagon train, the days of struggle that had forged an unbreakable bond. I never imagined when I joined the wagon train that I'd find my future in a place we were only meant to pass through, she murmured against his chest. Life rarely follows the trails we think we're meant to travel, Adam replied, stroking her hair. Sometimes we have to get lost to find where we truly belong. They spent the remainder of the day exploring the property, Adam pointing out ideas for improvements, Catherine offering suggestions. By the time they rode back toward Santa Fe in late afternoon, the future had begun to take shape. A future rooted in land they'd just visited, but expansive enough to accommodate dreams they were only beginning to articulate. That evening they shared their news with Martha and the wagon train community. They were met with surprise, congratulations, and genuine well wishes. Dixon was perhaps most enthusiastic. Always thought you two would make a good match, he declared. Even before this whole getting left behind business, something about the way you watched out for her from the start. Adam raised an eyebrow. Was I that obvious? To everyone but the lady herself, I reckon. Catherine felt herself blushing. Looking back, she could recall moments during the journey when Adam had shown her special consideration, bringing fresh water during dry stretches, helping her down difficult terrain, lingering near her campfire to ensure she was comfortable. Had he been drawn to her even then? The thought was both flattering and humbling. The next 2 weeks passed in whirlwind activity. While the wagon train made final preparations, Catherine and Adam focused on plans for remaining in Santa Fe. Adam formally notified Dixon of his decision. Catherine visited the schoolmaster and was offered a position starting in autumn. Most importantly, arrangements were made for their wedding before the wagon train's departure. A small adobe church near the plaza would host the ceremony, with the entire community invited. Martha insisted on helping Catherine prepare, offering her own wedding dress. With alterations by a skilled seamstress, The simple white gown was transformed to fit Catherine's slender frame. On their wedding morning, as Martha helped her cousin dress, she grew uncharacteristically sentimental. "I'm going to miss you terribly," she admitted. "When I invited you to join us, I never imagined we'd be parting before reaching Oregon." "I never imagined it either," Catherine said, embracing her cousin. "But life has a way of changing our plans when we least expect it." Martha stepped back, wiping away a tear. "Adam is a good man. Anyone who would ride back into a blizzard to save someone, that's the kind of man a woman can trust with her life." "And her heart," Catherine added softly. "And her heart," Martha agreed with a watery smile. "Now let's get that veil in place. We can't keep your groom waiting." The church was filled with sunlight and the scent of early spring flowers when Catherine entered. Adam waited at the altar, looking more handsome than she'd ever seen him in a new black suit, dark hair neatly trimmed, face clean-shaven. But it was the expression in his eyes, as he watched her approach, that Catherine would remember most clearly. A look of such profound love and wonder that it seemed to illuminate him from within. The ceremony was simple and brief, conducted by the local priest in a mixture of Spanish and English, reflecting the blended culture of their new home. When Adam slipped the gold band onto her finger, his hands were steady and sure, the hands of a man certain of his choice. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the priest declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." As Adam leaned down to seal their union with a kiss, Catherine felt rightness that transcended all uncertainty and hardship. They had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, had survived dangers that might have broken lesser spirits, and had emerged with a bond she knew would withstand whatever challenges lay ahead. The celebration that followed was joyful and boisterous. Local musicians provided music. A feast combined American and Mexican traditions. As sun began to set, Adam drew Catherine aside. "Happy?" he asked, arm around her waist as they watched dancers. "More than I knew was possible," she replied honestly. "And you?" "I have everything I never knew I wanted," Adam said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "A home, a future, and a wife who is as brave as she is beautiful." Catherine smiled up at him. Not bad for a man who once claimed to prefer the solitude of the trail. "The trail led me to you," Adam replied simply. "That makes all the difference." 2 days later, they stood with the rest of the settlement to wave goodbye as the wagon train finally departed. There were tears as Catherine embraced Martha and her children one last time, but also promises to write and perhaps even visit once both families were settled. As the last wagon disappeared around the bend, Adam took Catherine's hand, their matching gold bands catching morning sunlight. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Xavier?" Catherine smiled, savoring the sound of her new name. "Yes, Mr. Xavier, I believe I am." They rode side by side toward their property, no longer simply land with potential, but the foundation for the life they would build together. The adobe house awaited them, already beginning to reflect their joint efforts. It was still rough around the edges, requiring months of work. But as they dismounted in the yard that was now truly theirs, Catherine felt only excitement for the journey ahead. "I have something to show you," Adam said, helping her down. "A wedding gift of sorts. It wasn't quite ready before the ceremony." Curious, Catherine followed him inside. He led her to the main room where a new addition stood against the wall, a beautiful upright piano, its wood gleaming in the light. Catherine gasped, moving forward to touch the polished surface with reverent fingers. "Adam, how did you—" "It came all the way from St. Louis on the last supply wagon," he explained, clearly delighted by her reaction. "Martha mentioned you'd had to leave your family's piano behind. I thought our home should have music in it." Tears pricked her eyes as she lifted the keyboard cover and ran fingers lightly over ivory keys. It's wonderful, the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me. Will you play something? Adam asked, stepping closer. Christen our home with music? Catherine nodded, sitting on the bench. After a moment's consideration, she began to play. Not a classical piece or church hymn, but a simple folk tune she'd heard local musicians playing at their wedding celebration. The melody filled the room, breathing life into spaces that had stood empty too long. As the last notes faded, Adam sat beside her on the bench, expression solemn despite the joy filling their day. I made a promise when I found you in that snowstorm, he said quietly. I said I wouldn't leave you again. I want you to know I meant it then, and I mean it even more now. Whatever comes, Catherine, we face it together. Catherine leaned against his shoulder, feeling his strength and warmth. Together, she agreed. That's how we found our way here, and that's how we'll build our future. Outside their window, the New Mexico sun cast long shadows across land that would sustain them. Inside, the bonds they'd forged in crisis and tempered with love created a different kind of shelter, one that would endure long after adobe walls crumbled to dust. In that moment, Catherine understood with perfect clarity that sometimes being left behind wasn't an ending, but a beginning, the first step on a path leading not away from something, but toward exactly where she was meant to be. The years that followed proved the wisdom of their choice. The territory changed rapidly as more settlers arrived. Adam and Catherine's homestead evolved alongside the growing community, becoming not just a home, but a center of hospitality and learning. Their first child, a son they named William after Adam's father, arrived almost exactly 1 year after their wedding. The local midwife guided Catherine through childbirth with confidence. When she finally invited Adam in to meet his son, the wonder on his face made all Catherine's pain worthwhile. He's perfect, Adam whispered, cradling the tiny bundle. Perfect, just like his mother. 2 years later, their daughter Elizabeth joined the family, followed by another son, James. With each addition, their life grew richer and more deeply rooted. Catherine's school flourished, expanding from a single room to a proper building with multiple classrooms as Santa Fe's population increased. Though she took time away after each child's birth, she always returned to teaching. Adam discovered unexpected talents as a rancher and businessman. The 10 acres they started with grew to 30, then 50. He raised horses, developing a breeding program that became known throughout the territory. His knowledge of the region made him a valuable consultant for railroad companies, gradually extending their lines. Life wasn't without challenges, of course. The harsh environment tested their resilience, droughts threatening their water supply, severe winters isolating them for weeks, occasional tensions between the territory's diverse cultural groups. During a particularly difficult period, when prolonged drought coincided with economic downturn affecting Adam's business, Catherine found him standing on the porch late one night, staring at stars with troubled expression. You ever regret it? She asked, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders as she joined him. Staying here instead of continuing on the trail. Adam turned, surprise evident even in dim starlight. Never, he said firmly. Not for a single moment. He drew her into his arms. The challenges we face here are just that. Challenges to be overcome, not reasons for regret. This land, this life we've built, it's everything I never knew I wanted until I found you. Even when the well runs low and the bank account follows suit, Catherine teased gently. Adam's laugh rumbled through his chest. Even then, especially then, because facing those challenges with you makes them bearable. As their children grew, Adam and Catherine taught them not just practical frontier skills, but also values, courage, resilience, compassion, appreciation for diverse cultures. They maintained contact with Martha's family in Oregon, through regular letters. In summer of 1875, 7 years after the wagon train had continued without them, they undertook the journey north to visit. The reunion was joyful, with cousins meeting for the first time and adults marveling at how much had changed. Martha's husband had established a successful lumber business, and their children had grown into confident young people. "You were right to stay in Santa Fe," Martha admitted one evening. "I can see now that it was where you were meant to be, with the man you were meant to find." Catherine smiled, thinking of the strange twist of fate that had separated her from the wagon train. "Sometimes the wrong path leads to the right destination," she said simply. When they returned to Santa Fe after their month-long visit, the familiar sight of their adobe homestead against mountain backdrop brought rightness that confirmed Martha's words. This was indeed where they belonged, not because fate had stranded her, but because they'd chosen to build their life here day by day, challenge by challenge, joy by joy. On the 20th anniversary of their wedding, Adam surprised Catherine by taking her back to the small church where they'd exchanged vows. The building had been expanded over the years, but the simple altar remained unchanged. 20 years, Adam mused, standing with her in the empty church. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday I found you in that snowstorm. Other times, it seems like another lifetime entirely." Catherine leaned against his shoulder, noting the silver threading his dark hair, the lines framing his eyes that did nothing to diminish the warmth of his gaze. "Would you do it again?" she asked. "Ride back into a blizzard for a woman you barely knew?" Adam smiled, lifting her hand to kiss her palm. "For you, without hesitation. Though I'd prefer not to test that particular claim at our age." Catherine laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet church. "No need. You've proven your point quite thoroughly over the years, Mr. Xavier." That evening they hosted a celebration at their homestead, inviting friends and neighbors to commemorate not just their anniversary, but the life they'd built in the community. Their home had become a gathering place where people of all backgrounds came together. Hispanic families who'd lived in the territory for generations, Anglo settlers who'd arrived more recently, representatives from native tribes with whom Adam had established respectful trading relationships. As twilight fell and lanterns were lit around the yard, Catherine sat on the porch with Adam, watching their grown children mingle with guests. William was deep in conversation with a neighboring rancher's daughter, his expression betraying interest that went beyond friendship. Elizabeth danced with several young men, her laugh carrying across the yard. James had gathered an audience to whom he was explaining some new medical technique with animated gestures. "We did well, didn't we?" Adam said softly. "Not just with the ranch or the house, but with them. They're good people." "The best of both of us," Catherine agreed, "plus something uniquely their own." Adam took her hand, thumb tracing the worn gold band that hadn't left her finger in 20 years. "I used to think happiness was something that happened to other people. People who hadn't seen what I'd seen during the war, who hadn't lost what I'd lost. Meeting you, building this life together, it taught me that joy isn't something you find, but something you create day by day." Catherine turned to face him, seeing in his eyes the same steadfast love that had sustained her through every challenge and triumph. "You came back for me in that snowstorm," she said softly. "But in every way that matters, we've been finding our way back to each other ever since, through droughts and difficult harvests, through childbirth and childhood illnesses, through all the ordinary days that add up to an extraordinary life." Adam leaned forward to kiss her, a gesture as familiar as breathing, yet still capable of quickening her heart. "And we'll keep finding our way back," he promised against her lips, "for as many days as we're given." From the yard came the sound of music starting up, violin, guitar, the clear notes of a flute. Their guests began forming sets for dancing, calls going out for the host to join them. Adam stood and offered Catherine his hand, blue eyes twinkling with the same light that had first captured her attention all those years ago. "Shall we, Mrs. Xavier? I believe they're playing our song." Catherine took his hand and rose, moving with him toward the music and laughter, toward the life they had built from the most unlikely of beginnings. A life that had started with a promise made in a snowstorm and fulfilled through thousands of ordinary days and extraordinary moments. A life that proved beyond any doubt that sometimes being left behind was the first step toward finding exactly where you belonged. If you enjoyed this story of Catherine and Adam's incredible journey from a life-threatening blizzard to a lasting love that shaped an entire community, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below telling us which moment touched your heart the most. Was it Adam's brave decision to defy orders, the Christmas compass rose, or that beautiful piano reveal? We love hearing from you, and your engagement helps us bring you more amazing historical romance stories like this one. Until next time, remember, sometimes the wrong path leads us exactly where we're meant to be,